Hey everyone, my name is Jason Bell, and this is episode number 48. In this episode, I'm at Texas Card House in Houston, Texas, playing 1-2 no limit hold'em. Now, there's a $300 maximum buy-in and a buy-in for $300. Well, there's a lot to get to. Hope you guys enjoy. Let's get right into it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I arrive at TCH on this random Tuesday morning at about 9:45 in the a.m. At this time of day, I'm expecting some OMC type players. That's old man coffee, for those of you that don't know. Generally more nitty retiree type of players that only raise with pocket aces or kings. Also expecting some regulars that may or may not be doing this for a living, and other folks that might have the day off of work. Here, this is the very first hand dealt to me of the session, and there's a $5 under the gun straddle on. I'm in the +1 position, first to act, and look down at ace-5 of spades. The chip runner's setting up my chips, and before you know it, the MP folds a bit out of turn and the low jack limps for 5. Yeah. Okay. Ace-5 suited is in quite a few opening charts from this position. It generally plays well in multi-way pots and can obviously make the nut flush and has wheel draw possibilities. So I open the action for $15, which is my standard open when there's a $5 straddle on. The out of turn low jack limper makes the call. It folds all the way around to the under the gun straddler and he makes the call as well. Okay. Not expecting the low jack to have much here given the attempt at a limp pre-flop, and the straddler is likely going to be pretty darn wide as well given his position. And we're off to a flop, which is 10 jack 5 with 2 clubs and no spades. Okay, bottom pair, and that's just about it here. The straddler checks, and I think both the 10 and the jack are certainly in their range a bit more, so I make the check as well, and the low jack also checks. Well, if he hit one of those 2 cards, you'd expect a bet here, but he didn't. The turn is the 9 of clubs, so that completes the front door flush, and man, this board's getting wetter and wetter. Straddler checks again, and with my bottom pair, I check as well, and the low jack also checks. What the heck? How's this board so wet and nobody's connected with this thing? Well, okay. The river's the king of spades. Geez, just another card that can beat me here. The straddler just mucks. I check and the low jack checks again. I announce pair of 5s and show, and the low jack shows pocket 4s. Holy cow, did not expect that, but that'll definitely work. Pretty uneventful post-flop play here, but want to show you guys what I got right off the bat. Okay, this is a few hands later. Here I'm in the cutoff position and look down at ace-jack of hearts. There's no straddle on in this hand, and the +1 opens the action with the limp. Low jack also contributes to the pot with the limp, and yep, raising this one up for sure, and I bumped this one up to $15. Now this is a bit light and should have raised this one a bit more to like 18 or 20. Generally my standard open in a 1-2 or 1-3 game is $12. I generally add any additional limpers to my standard open, but here I go with 15. +1 makes the call and the low jack folds. Now given that he limped, we're not going to be dealing with any premiums, so it's likely he's holding a small to mid pocket pair to maybe a weak suited ace or maybe a middling suited connector. And we're off to a flop, which is deuce, deuce, 3 with 2 spades and a heart. He checks, and yeah, really only have some backdoor possibilities, but also have a couple of overs here, and I think this equity is worthy of a continuation bet. So I throw out 3 red chips for a total of $15, and he instantly makes the call. And when folks do that, they're typically on a draw. So does he have like ace-4 suited or ace-5 or maybe a couple of spades? The turn is the 6 of clubs. Okay, so my backdoors are officially dead. He checks again, and yeah, really now only hoping for a jack or an ace, so what's that, like 6 outs? So I make the check. And the river is the 5 of hearts. Well, that's not going to work. The +1 now announces a bet of $30. Yeah, this is a pretty quick and easy fold, so I lay this one down, and he shows pocket 4s for the straight. Man, ran into him twice in a row now right up front. Okay folks, this is a full rotation later. Here I'm in the cutoff position and look down at queen 9 of hearts. The action folds to me and I open for $11 this time, I guess mainly because that's what I have. I could have put out 3 red chips and announced my regular open for 12, but I go with 11. The small blind makes the call and the big blind calls as well. Okay, again likely up against some middling hands here, and we're off to a flop, which is deuce, deuce, 6 with 1 heart. Man, another low board here. The blinds check to me as the pre-flop aggressor, and I could put out a bet here like the last hand with my backdoor heart draw and a couple of overs, but I change things up a bit this time around and make the check. The turn is the 3 of clubs, so now my heart draw is dead. The blinds check again, and you know what? I think this is a good opportunity for a double barrel bluff here, assuming the river's a decent one and only one of them calls the street. I only have a couple of overs, and they don't really seem too interested in this thing, so I put out a bet of $15, which I think is a bit on the small side. Small blind makes the call, and the big blind lets it go. So what is he calling here with? Pocket 4s or maybe a couple of clubs? The river is actually a good one, the ace of spades. The small blind checks again, and that confirms he does not in fact have an ace. Time to get a bit more aggressive, and I announce a bet of $40, and he snap folds this thing as quickly as humanly possible. All right, bluff gets through. That'll work. Okay, folks, keep getting playable hands here right off the bat. This one's two hands later, and here I'm in the low jack position. Look down at King Queen offsuit. The under the gun opens the action for $15. It folds to me, and yeah, his open from that position could mean he's got some premiums here. Anywhere from aces down to nines. Could have ace king, ace queen, or maybe ace jack suited. I think a call or a fold here is fine, but I think a raise with this hand would be a bit light. If this were suited, no question I'd 3-bet here, but it's not, and I like to make the call. The hijack to my left makes the call, and the big blind calls as well. Okay. Obviously, the under the gun is going to be the strongest here, and we're 4 ways to a flop, which is 8, king, 9, all spades. Well, that certainly works. Top pair in the second nut flush draw in my hand. Big blind checks, and the under the gun checks as well. That's interesting. Would he check aces here on this monotone board? Maybe. Could he have like pocket jacks? Well, definitely putting in some of my poker chips into this pot, no doubt about it, but what's the right amount? I really smashed this thing, so do I bet something really small, like 15 or 20 bucks, or go a bit larger with like $35 or $40 or even pot? I mean, if I go the pot route and get called, I'm likely up against a made hand for sure, so I think it's better to go with the in-between amount of 35 bucks here. The hijack and big blind quickly get out of the way, and the under the gun thinks about this one for a bit, looks at his cards, which tells me he forgot if he has a spade or not. Grabs some chips, and I think he's gonna call, but nope, he lets it go, and I take this one down. That'll work. Okay guys, I am not kidding. This is the very next hand, and I'm sure I might be getting a bit of a loose reputation at the table. Here I'm in the middle position seat and look down at 6-7 of spades. +1 opens the action for $6, and you don't really see that sizing all too much. Kind of feels like a limp, but I am in the mood to play and bump this thing up to $20. The cutoff makes the call, and the +1 makes the call as well. Okay, right now I'm thinking both the +1 and cutoff could have a couple of suited broadways to a middling pocket pair, or 3 ways to a flop, which is 3-5 king with 1 spade. Okay, got a gutter and a backdoor spade draw. +1 checks to the pre-flop aggressor, which is me, and sometimes when a relatively dry king hits the flop, I'll take a stab at the pot, but also given my draws, a c-bet is certainly warranted here, so I continue with a bet of $20, and both the cutoff and +1 make the call. That's interesting. Time to slow down maybe? They hit a king or maybe on a diamond draw? The turn is the 9 of hearts. Shouldn't really change much. My spade draw is dead, but it does bring in a double gutter. +1 checks again, and yeah, kind of in a bit of a pickle. Right now I just have, 7 high? Think I want to check. Hope the cutoff checks as well and see what happens on the river, and he does in fact check. The river is the 4 of diamonds. Well, I make my straight, but that completes the front door flush draw too. Not very ideal. +1 checks, which makes me think he probably just has a king, and I think I want to put out a blocker bet here. There's a chance that both have got a king and maybe 2 pair with king 9, so I'm thinking I put out something a little small here. Now if you get raised, it'll be an easy fold, so I put out a bet of $35, about a fourth of the pot, and both the cutoff and +1 players make the call. The cutoff shows queen 10 of diamonds. Gosh dang it. I muck, and the +1 mucks as well. Well, worth the shot. Yep, you guessed it, very next hand. Here I'm in the +1 position and look down at 7-8 of spades. There's a $5 live trial on, and I'm first act. And again, in a bit of an odd spot here with this hand. Definitely at the low end of opens from this position, but openable nonetheless. So I open this one up to $15, and we finally get some Texas action as the low jack, hijack, cutoff, small blind, and under the gun all make the call. Holy smokes, yeah. Gonna likely see some very wide ranges here, and we're off to a flop, which is ace 10-8 with no spades. Well, just to have bottom pair here. It checks to me, and with so many people left act behind in my bottom pair, I check as well, and it checks to the cutoff, who puts out a pretty sizable bet here of $50, which is about half of his stack. It folds to me, and yeah, not worth it here. Guy could be representing 2 pair or maybe a set, and I let this one go. And both the hijack and low jack players let it go as well, and the cutoff takes this one down. Pretty quick hand here, but just getting a ton of hands to play. Folks, this is 2 hands later, and feel like I've got a VPIP north of 100 if there was such a thing. Here I'm in the big blind and look down at 8-6 of clubs. The MP limps, the hijack limps, the cutoff raises to $15. It folds to me, and I think this suited 1-gapper is worthy of a call in a single raise spot, so I make the call. The MP lets it go, and the hijack calls. And we're 3 ways to a flop, which doesn't get much better. 6 deuce 6 with 2 spades. Yep, smash this thing. Now a case could be made to just lead out here, but that's really not my style unless we're on the river and don't want to risk getting it checked through. But here I check with the intention to raise this thing up, give him the 2 spades on the board, hoping it doesn't get checked through. The hijack checks, and the cutoff decides he wants to try to stab at this thing and puts out a bet of $15. Yep, raise is a coming, so I announce a raise to $45, and both the hijack and cutoff couldn't fold quick enough. Man, well, at least I got something here. Should I have checked though? Let them catch up a bit? Board was pretty dry except for those 2 spades. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter. Happy to take this thing down. Okay, this is not the next hand, but about 45 minutes later, played in a few uneventful pots where I won some and lost some. In this hand, I'm in the big blind and look down at King Jack offsuit. There's a blind under the gun limp to my left. It folds to the cutoff who also limps. The button over limps. The small blind completes in another interesting spot here. I think if this were suited, no question I'd raise this one up, especially with all the dead money in the pot, but it's not, and actually a relatively weak hand, so I make the check. And we've got 5-way action to a flop, which is 9 Jack 8 with 2 hearts. Well, that's not wet at all. Flop definitely smashes a lot of the limpers' ranges. Small blind checks, and I think I want to throw out a bit of a pro bet with my top pair and overcard with this limp pot. There really was no pre-flop aggressor, so I put out a smallish bet of $10. The under the gun makes the call pretty quickly, which makes me think he's on a draw. The cutoff and button players fold, and the small blind takes a look at his cards, grabs a bunch of chips, but only makes the call. That's an odd maneuver. And before we continue, we've got a very new player at the table on my right who transferred from another one and has been playing for nearly 24 hours straight. So I want to get into a few pots with him as he may not be seeing quite straight. The turn is the 6 of diamonds. Shouldn't really change much, and if someone's got a 7-10, they've already gotten there. Small blind checks, and I think I want to continue with the aggression, so I put out a bet of $20, about half the pot. The under the gun waves his hand and calls again. Yeah, no doubt he's on a draw here, but the small blind doesn't take too long and jams for $112. Yeah, I think he's got at bare minimum 2 pair here, possibly a straight as well with queen 10 or 7-10. And the way he acted after the flop kind of makes me think he considered jamming at that point as well. Shouldn't have bet here on the turn, but pretty easy fold, so I'll let this one go. And the under the gun thinks about this one for a while, a solid minute, and folds queen 7 of hearts face up, so he was in fact on a draw. Well, didn't lose too much here, so not too upset about this one. Okay, this hand's not too much later. Here I'm on the button and look down at ace-9 of clubs. It folds to the guy on fumes to my right, and he opens the action for $9. Yep, another odd one. Definitely going to try to single him out, so I raise this one up to $25, but get a few more customers than intended as both the blinds make the call and the cutoff calls as well. Yeah, should have raised this one up to like 30 or 35. We're 4 ways to a flop, which is deuce 7-9 with 2 spades. Small blind checks and the big blind donk leads for $45. Man, what is he representing here? No way he called pre-flop with 7 deuce. Maybe a set of deuces or 7s. Unlikely 9s as I've got the 9 blocker. He could have a couple of spades though, maybe like 8-9 of spades or something. But the cutoff calls the 45. What on earth? Is this a good spot for a squeeze? Been trying to play a bit more aggressively this session, and yep, I think a squeeze is warranted. If either of them got a set, then they've got a set, so I jam for 167 effective, and the big blind snap calls. Well, that's not very good, and the cutoff folds. Praying for a miracle here. The turn is the queen of diamonds, and the river is the 10 of spades. Yep, about as bad of a run out as you can get. I show my pair of 9s, and the big blind shows 9-7 offsuit. Well, with that turn and river, I was going to be smoked anyways. Okay, before we get into this hand, I bought in for another 300, and the guy to my right has been doing nothing but blind raising left and right, and at one point, don't even think he even looked at his cards until the turn on a couple of the hands. A lot of the other folks have been pretty active as well, so given that, time to adjust my game and tighten up a bit. Here, this is about 40 minutes after the previous hand. I'm in the undergun seat and look down at ace-queen offsuit. I open the action for a little bit more than my norm, this time for $15. +1 makes the call, the MP calls, and the cutoff jams for his remaining stack. Now, I've seen him do this several times over the past hour, and he's for sure tilted. The dealer says he's got 75 out there. It folds to me, and yeah, I think a jam here is the play to single him out. He's likely not going to be overly strong given his tilt. Would rather battle one dude as well with the ace-queen offsuit than 3 or 4, so I jam for $270 effective. +1 folds pretty quickly, and the MP thinks about this for a while, shows his cards to the +1, starts talking about him a bit, and lets it go. And I get my wish, battling just against the cutoff here, and he asked to run it twice, which is generally a good sign. And I agree, generally okay with any requests. We're off to the first board, and he shows pocket 8s, and the first flop is queen 5-4, and the turn is the king of spades, and the river is the 6 of clubs. All right, free rolling here. The second flop is deuce 5-5. The turn is the deuce of hearts, and the river is the 9 of hearts. Well, we're chopping. Too bad I'm running it twice, but that's okay. Equity doesn't change when you do that. And the cutoff and I pretty much split the +1 and MP's call pre-flop. Okay, this is the very next hand and started the recording a bit late. Here I'm in the big blind and look down at a premium pocket kings. The under the gun and +1 players both limp. It folds to the active guy on fumes to my right in the small blind, and he raises this one up to $16. Yep, 3-bet, here we come, and this time definitely raising a bit more to single him out than what I did 2 hands ago. And think a $55 bet might do the trick, so that's what I do here. I raised to 55. The limpers get out of the way, and the small blind makes the call. Okay, plan's working so far, and we're heads up to a flop, which is Jack 4-7 Rainbow. Pretty good flop for sure. The small blind donk leads for $75. Yeah, from this guy, I think this is more an attempt to steal than betting for actual value. Here we go. Think it's time to jam again. He might be capped here with top pair, so I shove for $230 effective, and he thinks on this one for a solid 2 minutes. And that begs the question, at what point would you call the clock on someone? I've not done that before and don't plan to do that here, but for the for-profit players and pros, a lot, if not most, are concerned about their hourly, and I can see them calling the clock when maybe 4 or 5 minutes have gone by. I don't know. Guess I just don't have it in me to do that, but after a solid 2 minutes, the small blind folds, and I take this one down. That'll work. Okay, this hand's about 10 minutes later. Here I'm in the low jack position and look down at Jack 8 of clubs. The MP to my right's away from the table, so I can open up my range just a tad, and I open this one up for $12. The cutoff, who's about as passive as it gets, makes the call, and the remaining players fold. Now this guy could have nearly anything here. I'm guessing he's got a VPIP north of 80%. We're heads up to a flop, which is 10-9-4 with 2 clubs. That definitely works. Open ender and a flush draw. I'm first to act, and for sure putting in some of my poker funds into this pot and put out a continuation bet of $15. He takes a look at his cards, think he's going to call, but nope. He sends them to the muck, and I take this quick one down. Here, this is a few hands later, and man, I tell you, I'm really getting a lot of playable hands this session. Here I'm in the big blind and look down at ace-queen offsuit. There's a $5 live straddle on, and the loose passive player in the +1 seat limps for $5. It folds the decent player in the cutoff position who raises to $20. Loose, aggressive, sleepless player to my right makes the call, and yeah, no way this is a call here. Bumping this one up for sure, and I think the larger the better, so I raise this one up to $100, but the under the gun straddler jams for $259 effective. The +1 and cutoff players both get out of the way, and the small blind thinks on this one for a bit. Almost asked for a count, but lets it go, and I've got a decision to make here. This guy on my left is relatively new to the table and don't know much about him, but let's do the math. The pot's what, 404, and it's 159 for me to call, so the odds are about 2.5 to 1 or so, or as a percentage, about 28%. And to calculate that, it's risk divided by risk plus pot, so that's 159 divided by 563 if I call. So I only have to be good about 28% of the time, and I think it's worthy of a call, so that's what I do. So much for tightening up, and we're off to a flop, which is Queen 3-7 Rainbow. That works. Hopefully not up against kings, though. The turn is the king of clubs. Well, less likely he's got kings now. And the river is the 6 of hearts. I show my pair of queens, and he mucks. And in a bit of frustration, too, and I take this one down. Must have had jacks or 10s, I guess. Well, that works. Fun hand here. Okay, this hand's a while later. Here I'm under the gun and look down at pocket 7s. This is pretty much at the low end of opens from this position. 6s and below, I'll generally just throw them into the muck, but here I open the action for $12. +1 on my left makes the call, the MP makes the call, and the cutoff calls as well. Well, gotta get pretty lucky here, and we're 4 ways to a flop, which is deuce 9-3 Rainbow. I'm first to act, and with my second pair and 3 people to act behind, I think a check is in order, so I make the check, but the +1 bets $17. The MP, of course, makes the call, the cutoff folds, and this is an interesting spot. I think in all likelihood I'm behind. Could be up against a set of deuces, 3s, or something like 8-9 or 9-10 suited, but I decided to peel one this street and throw in the 17. Now the MP obviously could still have anything, could be on a gutter for all we know. We're off to a turn, which is the deuce of spades, so that pairs the board. I check again, and the +1 now puts out a bet of $35. The MP thinks about this for a bit, but lets it go, and now the action's on me. I could float an additional street. He didn't bet much, which makes me think he doesn't have a set, but I'm way behind a 9 here, and I think the best thing to do is let this one go, so I fold. Not really worth it here. Okay, folks, this is the final hand of the session. Here I'm in the low jack position and look down at a nice one, pocket jacks. The sleepless man to my right is away from the table, and I open the action for $15, and unbelievably, it folds to the small blind who makes the call. His range is going to be fairly tight, thinking low to middling pocket pairs with some suited broadways. We're off to a flop, which is a good one, 4-8 deuce Rainbow. Pretty darn dry board. Small blind checks to me, and of course I'm going to continue with a bet here, so I throw out a bet of $20. He fiddles with his chips a bit, think he's going to raise, but nope. Just makes the call. Another interesting play here. Is that some sort of angle maybe? And maybe angle's not the right word. Maybe he's acting strong but might not be. Regardless, we're off to a turn, which is the 3 of diamonds. Now, unless he's got ace-5 here, I'm going to be in pretty good shape. He checks again, and what's the right sizing? He could have 9s here or 10s. I go with about a 2/3 size bet of $55. I think he'll call that with an overpair and even an 8. And he does, in fact, make the call. set of fours maybe. The river's the deuce of hearts, so that pairs the board. He checks again, so that tells me he doesn't have a set, that river to boat. I think the best thing to do is to continue to barrel something small, maybe like $50, but if he raises, man, it'd be a tough fold. This guy's fairly new to the table and don't know much about him, so I check, played a bit safe, and he announces he has a pair, and I'm thinking, does that mean he has ace queen or something? Because the board is already paired. I announce 2 pair and show my jacks, and they're good. I take this one down. Well, everyone, I stayed for about 40 minutes after this hand, didn't get anything interesting on video, played for about 4 hours, was in for 600 and out for 760 for a profit of $160. Thanks everyone for watching. Please like and subscribe, and have a good one.